Cool. Hired. Hired already. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen McGee, and right now we're going to be talking about breaking into the world of specialty pharmacy. Uh, so earlier this year at Assembia in Vegas, we met with Elizabeth Johnson by accident. I think we were all kind of done with the entire the entire rally there. And one of my problems is I'm not great at political correctness. I'm much more of a conversationalist. I'm way too down to earth. I can't relate to people when it comes to just being very professional. I can throw out some curse words left and right, and if you can't accept that, we probably won't be friends. So once we started talking, we really started getting together, and she was like, "Hey, I would love for you guys to present and speak at the Healthcare Advocate Summit." We're like, "Well, you guys are talking about infusion and talking about the medical field. We're trying to break into it. We haven't been successful. I don't know if we could actually talk about it." She's like, "Well, talk about that." It's like, "So talk about the things that piss us off, especially pharmacy." Okay, yeah, we can do that. And I was like, "Well, you have 30 minutes." I was like, "You want us to spend just 30 minutes talking about the pain points of being a specialty pharmacy?" Okay, so we've been through some of these seminars so far today, and a lot of it's just talking about how you're already sort of a successful specialty pharmacy, talking about the intricacies of dealing with the medical contracts, some of the issues with the PBMs. But we're like, well, what if you're like us? You're a specialty pharmacy who is an expert at the PBM side, but you don't quite know how to break into that world of the medical side. You're trying to get your foot through the door. You're trying to decide how can you navigate getting through some of those payers, the PBMs that can restrict you and hit you with all these roadblocks of audits, inspections. You have to have accreditations. They cost money. You have to have an endless pool of a cash flow to actually get access to the medication. You need limited distribution drugs. How do you get the limited distribution drugs? How can you service the patient that you care so much about if they have to go to one or two or three specific specialty pharmacies? And I wonder who owns the specialty pharmacies. So that's sort of where we walk into it. So I have to sort of walk a tight line too, because I don't want to say too much, and I can't say specific names of what those are. You can sort of read between the lines. But we'll try to go through some of the issues that we run into, who we are, some of our pain points, and how we're trying to sort of break into that world and how we're trying to evolve. So, as much as we would love to sort of provide education on, hey, this is the thing you have to do, this might be more of a, these are the things not to do, and here's some of the pain points you're going to run into if you try to go down this road. And it might even be more education from you guys telling us how you guys did it. So, uh, so Sandrax Pharmacy, we're a specialty pharmacy located in North Texas. We have multiple locations. We focus on specialty bleeding disorders. Infertility is a big one for us as well. We have a sterile compounding lab, non-sterile compounding lab. We deal with MS, neurology, pain, all across the board. And one of the things that, why we even thought about this, is we tried to get into the medical space about 5 or 6 years ago for IVIG, and we attempted to process some medical claims, had no idea what we were doing, and it was a nightmare. And then we sort of walked away and said, you know what? How about we just focus on the things we do really well, try to be experts, and try to perfect that craft. And then we'll deal with medical down the line if it comes around. So earlier or last year, we had a manufacturer that reached out to us and had a specific medication that they had contracted with some other specialty pharmacies. I won't name the lane, but there were like 3 of the 4 biggies. And they were running into issues with those hubs not being able to sort of carry through that drug all the way through, because I guess they were running into hiccups with rejections on the medical side, and then they didn't want to go through and do any of the extra legwork to service the patient. So they reached out to us, and we said, well, sure, we'll try to jump into it. Let's try to take care of that patient. And then we went into the road of trying to get into the medical space, and we ran into a lot of problems. So a little bit about us. We're not PBM owned. We're a family owned specialty pharmacy. Yes, we exist. We are not we're not owned by private equity. We don't have a technology company that's servicing us. We are 100% family owned, but we have 135 employees. So we are operating with family values and treatment, but with the big core operations. And we do provide high quality service to some complex diseases, and I went through those earlier. And some of those roadblocks with being a specialty pharmacy is being able to get access to drugs, and that's where securing accreditations come in. So we have ACHC that covers our sterile compounding. We have URAC accreditation. We have specialty compounding through NABP as well. And those things cost money. So if you're trying to get into the specialty space, you kind of have to have good credit, you have to have good money, and you have to have the resources, which means a lot of people or a few people who never sleep. So that's also something that we walk into. And access to limited distribution drugs. And why is it important? Well, that's what makes it a specialty. You have to have access. And one of our drugs is for infertility, and it's follistim that we get through Organon. And that sort of separates us and allows us to get into limited networks. And we're able to sort of navigate and circumvent some of those roadblocks. Now we're talking about some of the barriers to entry and staying in the game. And I'll just sort of run through these, and then I'll allow my partner Nabil to introduce himself, and he'll sort of go through these more in depth. With the PBM monopolies, PBM owned specialty pharmacies with quote unquote favorite contracts, random audits to restrict servicing of patients, reimbursement inequalities, the private equity buyouts. That's when you have once family owned pharmacies, which truly care about not only the patient, but they care about the providers, they care about their team, and they're trying to do everything they can to make them still stand out, but then they get bought out. And now you have multi-million-dollar investments that expand, and they focus on the dollar and the return rather than they do on the patient. And then you have technology firms that buy out the private owned pharmacies and make a quick turnaround profit. So there's a lot to sort of go in through and all of that. So I'll allow Nabil to come up. He's my partner. He's the chief pharmacist. Introduce himself, and he'll go a little bit more into these barriers that we run into. There you go. This,
Hello, my friends. My name is Nabil Halak, and as you can tell, I have an accent. So I grew up in the alleys of downtown Jerusalem, and I learned to walk behind a counter of an independent pharmacy. And why is this relevant? I will circle around and tell you why. We, since I grew up with the independent value, the mom and pop shop, and ended up being a partner in a specialty pharmacy. That's what makes us unique. We are not a giant specialty pharmacy that in most cases you are forced to use because it's mandated. We are actually a specialty pharmacy with great values and family oriented. We can still provide that service of a family owned business on a specialty level. Here's the problem that we have a lot against us. One of them is PBMs, because I'm familiar with PBMs. Most of them own their own um, specialty pharmacy, and a lot of them mandate that their specialty drugs gets filled. Here's the problem, that a lot of times there's misconception that you can only use one of these big giant specialty pharmacies, and that's not true. Um, there's a specialty pharmacy mandated by the insurance or by the PBM, and there's manufacturers mandated. So basically, and I hope I don't offend anyone here if you're from Big Pharma. A lot of times they mandate that the medical community or the practices use a specialty pharmacy, specific one, and they do that for lack of better terms, laziness, because it's not required to use that specialty pharmacy, but they just basically, they're so worried about launching this product. They're so worried about recovering the billions of dollars they invested. So basically somebody comes in, hey, we can provide this and this and this and this, and they promise the moon. And so big pharma say, hey, we just hand it over. However, your patient is just a number. at these big PBM or um, big giant specialty pharmacy. They, with all due respect, these specialty pharmacies lack the um, the care that a family-owned specialty pharmacy can provide. And I'm not saying that we're everywhere, although we're licensed in 50 states, but we basically operate in Texas. And although we operate in a lot of states, but our concentration is Texas. What I'm saying is that we do exist, and a lot of specialty pharmacies like us exist. So I think, as an advocate of patients, it's in your patient's interest to look for these pharmacies, to encourage these pharmacies to try, because you're just basically giving the same service to the patient, but with human touch. With at uh, at our pharmacies across the wall, all our pharmacies, there's the slogan that says, "Treat every patient as family." And the thing is that our patients don't see this. That's not at the front end. That's where our employees are. So basically, every time they walk in the room or walk out of the room, they just see this because this is our value. That's what we stand for. So um, we have a lot of challenges. We are up against giant companies, and we're targeted with a lot of audits. Audits is part of this business, and we're not against audits because we have nothing to hide. However, um, the um, the audits could be educational. You can learn a lot. You can correct yourself. However, when it's targeted audits, when it's retaliation audits, when the insurance companies basically want you out of the business because they want to drive business to their own specialty pharmacy, they um, they tend to be um, they tend to do audits in retaliation, and that's basically one of our challenges. And then the reimbursement inequalities. PBM owned um, specialty pharmacies get favorite reimbursement. So what we can fill the same exact specialty medicine, and without mentioning names, this big PBM owned specialty pharmacy, they will get better reimbursement. So we're not fighting on the same level. We don't get reimbursed equally. Unfortunately, they're protected by the law, or at least lack of the law. And then we have the business part that's becoming a big challenge, that investment groups are going into the pharmacy business because they see or they believe that's lucrative and there's money to be made. So you get a lot of these investment groups that they have know nothing about pharmacy business. Um, um, they just want to put their money in an investment, so they buy out these, especially if it's a small specialty pharmacy. They want to basically escalate it and sell it, turn around and sell it in a couple of years. But the bottom line, their motivation is money, just to make money. That right there. And actually, speaking of that, a week ago, my partner and the CEO got a call from a group, uh, and they're saying, you showed up. We've been interested in you. We looked you up. It sounds great what you do. And we would like to invest, basically buy us out. And this is a story that's happening all the time now because investment group are interested in the pharmacy business. Not only them, now there's another group that's interested in the pharmacy business, which is technology investors, people who like to invest in technology. Um, the pharmacy business in general is behind when it comes to technology. And I think a lot has to do with HIPAA and regulations and contracts. So now a lot of specialty pharmacies are being taken over by technology to kind of merge the two and make a quick buck. So we, not when I say we, I mean family-owned specialty pharmacies. It's Everything against us simply is taking away the human factor. We are one of our specialties is infertility, and in infertility or IVF, you deal with patients that very emotional. I happen to be, although I'm a partner, but I still practice pharmacy, so I'm at the counter and dealing with a lady that has had 5 failing IVF is heartbreaking, and she's very emotional. And till today, I don't get it how a call center in Chicago or in New York can really feel that patient or help that patient. Same thing, hemophilia, one of our big specialties. A hemophilic child cannot play sports in most cases, although advancement has changed that, but cannot play sports. So dealing with the mother of um, that child, any bad move basically will bleed. So there's a lot of emotions, and I don't. I mean, basically, what I'm trying to say that if you want to advocate for your patient, if you want, look for these things. Don't take the easy way out. Don't just go, oh, we use so and so specialty pharmacy. We're used to them. Well, think about it. Can they provide what a family-owned mom and pop shop, quote unquote, also specialty pharmacy that can provide the same service? Um, and that's pretty much it. So, and let's see
Yeah.
more.
No, down. Two more. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, and sort of piggybacking on that, uh, I love analogies, and I started thinking about it like, what if you were trying to get into the airline industry? Right now, you have those big guys. You have United, you have American, you have Delta, but then there's like Southwest, which is weird. It's sort of it's domestic, and they get into this playing field, and they're relevant. And I mean, I remember a decade ago, maybe 12 or 13 years ago, it was like that thing you didn't really know about. You just heard about it, and you'd go to it because you're like, man, I could do a one-way flight from Dallas to Las Vegas for $79. Their customer care center is great. I can call and talk to someone right now. I don't have to wait on the line for 60 minutes or wait for a call back from American Airlines. Now, how has it gotten? Hell, the Southwest costs about as much, if not more, than American. And they can only really stay relevant in this league so long as they don't go international. The moment they decide to go Europe or Asia, that's the beginning of the end for Southwest. Because now you're going to have out of nowhere FAA regulations, international laws, and inspections, and things are not going to work right. And then all of a sudden they're going to go down, they're going to get bought out by America, just like that. Same thing. Same thing. So you're allowed to sort of play in this field so long as you stay in your lane. And we're trying to figure out how can we stay in the lane and expand at the same time. And a lot of these people are mom and pop shops who are trying to just stay relevant. They're not able to be an Accredo. They're not able to be the Walgreens specialty. They're not able to be the CVS. They don't have a PBM that owns the insurance payer, that has the PBM, has a specialty pharmacy, or have great relationship with a wholesaler. So how do you stay relevant and sort of focusing on that service? And I know it almost sounds poetic. It's like, man, service, it matters. It matters. Service oriented, always focusing on the patient and the team, which it seems like every single person that I've met here, they've never talked about themselves. They always talk about the patient. So having that as a forefront of your mindset is important. Due diligence and having the right person in the right position. One of the things I love is interviewing. I I'm the vice president of the company, but I interview every single person that comes through the door because I can be very persistent and asking questions and trying to read body language. I'm big on that. And one of the questions I always ask is, imagine you or me. You're trying to hire yourself. What are the things about yourself that would be red flags if you were trying to hire you? So what are? Now I always say, oh, there's a couple of caveats here. First, there is a such thing as a bad answer. The first bad answer is you don't know what to think of. You can't think of anything because that's just being dishonest. You can always think of something. If you don't know, ask your spouse or ask your friend, ask a partner. They have an essay for you. The next thing is another bad answer is a positive thing disguised as a negative one. That's when you say, I'm a perfectionist. I thought I just asked you to tell me about a red flag. I pay too close attention to detail. I care too much about others. I can't focus on this until I get done with this. You just described a robot, which is about as close to a perfect perfect employee outside of it, the emotional aspect. So I really want you to become vulnerable. Tell me what it is, because we can teach skills. You want to learn how to go through and start the PA process, do the cover my meds. We can teach you that. All of that. Outside of you getting the license, we can teach all the skills. But I can't teach maturity. I can't teach care. I can't teach your ability to hold and accept constructive feedback when you're told you're not perfect, when you're told that you don't do something right. Because if you can't hold yourself accountable, then all of a sudden we're going to have this conversation with you, and then you're going to get upset. What happens when you're upset? Now all of a sudden we're talking to a patient, that anger is going to transfer itself. Now all of a sudden we don't have a service person. We have a call center person from Chicago, like he was talking about, who could care less. They're just waiting for 5 o'clock to clock out. Now you just changed the brand. You changed who we are. You changed what we represent, and you no longer care about the patient. You're just pissed because someone told you weren't perfect. So making sure you have the right person in the right position is key. And taking that time to hire, don't focus on just needing a spot because the phones won't start ringing. Make sure you focus on the person being there, should stay there. And make sure that the person you're hiring is good for that position. Maybe they're not great with people. Oh, wow, damn, 5 minutes. Okay, you shut up. All right, persistence. Next, evaluate pain points within the organization. Utilize all methods of communication to cast out weaknesses in the industry. So treat all quote unquote sales calls, emails, messages as opportunities. Every single text message, email, phone call that I get that could be a sales call, I treat importantly, because there's nothing worse than sending an email or casting out a call and getting thrown into that wilderness we call junk mail. And you're like, I'm trying to sell a service. I'm trying to sell something that we do that's different. So I treat all of them seriously. I don't ever just throw away an because you never know what it's going to lead to. It could be a partnership, it could be something that has to do with technology. Who knows? Stay diligent in competing to have a place at the table. So limited distribution drugs, specialty contracts, that's what we're doing. And that's what we've been focusing on. And especially contracts, even when it comes to doing some of the things that I heard earlier, they were talking about specialty pharmacies being able to service and do prior authorization. I was just like, huh, especially pharmacy doing this PAs. The entire process is just initiating, like the entire process. I'm like, huh, don't say that, don't say the specialty pharmacy's name, because I guarantee you within 24 hours, they're going to get an inspection and it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a whole bunch of money that gets put back. They're going to have to go to court. So, because we're restricted on what we can do. There are a lot of things we want to. We want to do everything for the manufacturer, we want to do everything for the patient, everything we can for the provider. But we're restricted on how far we can ship out. Maybe in Texas, but you can't ship to Carolina. Not if the contract tells you can. But why not? We're specialty medication. All these for rare disease states. Well, you have to send an LOA, like a letter of approval. I can't remember what it means anymore. Huh? Thank you. Letter of agreement. You send it out to the major payers and say, hey, please, we're one of only 3 or 4 who have access to this medication. We want to send this out like for hemangiol. We want to send this out for a patient. You need to get access. You got to hope they're going to say, okay. If they don't, then what? Okay, well, let's just go and get it to the other 4 or 5 who have 80% of the market. Technology is king. Invest in a CIO and a CTO. I know that sounds like something you don't want to, that it shouldn't matter, but that's important, because I don't know if anyone's dealt with call centers, but have the phones always worked perfectly? Have there ever been an issue where there was a firewall? It's only one way directional communication. They can hear you, you can't hear them, the other way around. I am not a tech guy. To be a basic, I don't know, pseudo-scientist when it comes to like data, because I've had to fix firewalls, refix them, figure out the parameters, open up portals. I've learned more crap about CCO and technology in the last 4 years than I ever thought I would ever have to do. So making sure you have a person that's in-house outside of sort of partnering with, like I say, partnering with a reputable networking organization to manage your IT, because technology is king. And then finally providing what you would want as a physician and a patient. But again, restricted, because one of the things that physicians and manufacturers want, PAs. That's one of the major issues. It blocks up the nurses. It blocks up everyone on that staff. They can't do it because they're focused on trying to take care of the patient. They did it. They did their job. Your job is to go ahead and make sure they get the medication. So do your job. Why am I asked to go ask my nurse practitioner, hey, go and give me the paperwork? Now I have to file this and send this. They don't want to deal with that mess. They just want to take care of the patient. But they're restricted. So then they go out and they find a company that will do it all, but they could care less about how it's done. They just want to make sure they get the approval. But like we learned earlier this morning, you can get the approval and then come back 60 days and take it. So there are a lot of things that go into it. Man, I wish I could just sort of go on and on and on, but we are restricted, and I know another group is coming in. So I would love to sort of provide more insight, but I think it's more of a sort of a Q&A, and I think you guys have maybe 25 seconds to ask it. So
Like, have you looked into shipping to other states? How does that work? You have to have a presence in the state, right?
well, I'm trying to look around and make sure how much exposure I'm giving myself. This thing's not virtual, is it? All right. So yes, we're allowed to ship. We're licensed in 50 states. We're licensed in 50 states, and depending on the contract that we have with the PBM or the payer, we can ship to a separate state. But there are some which will completely restrict you from shipping outside the state of Texas. And if you do it and it goes through their, if it goes through their PBM, you could get inspected and lose that contract. So with areas like infertility, because a lot of it's just going to go through a special PBM, which we partner with, or it's all cash pay, we don't have to worry about that. Or if it's sterile compounding or compounding in general, it's not going through a PBM, but we don't have to worry about that. But that's not all of the business. A lot of this business is going to be bleeding disorders. So what do you have to do? Do you sacrifice the risk of shipping it to take care of the patient? Is it worth it? That's a question you kind of have to do some risk analysis. But we are licensed in 50 states and we try to take care of all the patients we currently have. That's about as much as I can say about that. Any other questions?
Have you run Orsini Pharmacy? Orsini Specialty Pharmacy?
Orsini?
That was a family. They're still around. They're kind of somewhat large now, but they started 10, 15 years ago as just a family-run SP. So just out of Chicago, I think.
Oh yeah, there's plenty. That's what I was trying to say. That they exist. They exist almost in every major city. But most practices don't know it.
Right.
And they're just pushed either by the big pharma, or by the insurance. Go use just when you're PBM and you own the specialty pharmacy without mentioning names, then you're allowed to ship everywhere, even overseas. So it's just not. However, I think if you advocate for the patient, you care about the patient, provide them better service. I think you need to do that extra research and try to find these specialty pharmacies, especially if it's small family owned.
Yes, ma'am.
Just dollars of inventory you have to maintain, and the CIO is important, but CFO, so.
We do have a CFO finally. She started out as our controller, and she came from, I can't believe what tax background she came from, but she was doing taxes. And she came over because I was doing the payroll, I was doing the HR, I was doing the contracts, the licensing, the accreditations, the contract negotiations, the compliance. I was literally doing it all. And eventually I have to see my kids. I have to see my wife. We have to spend some time together. So after about, I don't know, 120 complete 7-day work weeks because you're trying to build this thing. We had an individual who is better at accounting than I am. And I do have an accounting degree, but don't do it because I hate it. Thank you. So we do have a CFO who manages that stuff for us. So you'll have to.
Actually, I'm gonna tell you, it's probably as we stand now about $10 million.
Yeah.
That's just what you have on the shelf.
Yeah.
Now forget hemophilia. Hemophilia because it's in and out.
Yeah.
It's patient specific. Now if you add hemophilia, you can double it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.